Well, I think you have to point out a number of different factors. And the first one I would point to is the economic impact. Tenants, by nature, have less wealth, less accumulated wealth. And so anytime that there is a catastrophe, a disaster that impacts them economically, they are often among the first hit. And what has happened with this emergency is that it has impacted a very specific subgroup of tenants, which is those whose jobs and livelihoods have been directly impacted by shelter-in-place orders and by the ongoing emergency orders. So you have some low-income tenants that may have been working low-wage jobs that have since been stopped on one end of the range of the spectrum. And then on the other end is you have landlords who, due to a tenant's inability to pay rent, are suffering their own loss of income, and who may also be impacted employment-wise depending on their line of work. So the spectrum of impact really varies by case, and it varies by a number of different factors.
So, can you tell me what are some existing protections regarding evictions right now? Maybe even some protections for landlords in terms of payment. So, if they lean on their tenants to make payments, but their tenants can't because they have been directly impacted um, by COVID-19.
Mhm.
Um, what protections are there, first of all, for the tenants, and then how do the landlords also make their payments as well?
Well, there are a couple of different options. So locally in Napa, there's nothing specifically that protects tenants. What there is a little bit of relief within the eviction process, a couple of procedural steps within the eviction process. Tenants are still liable for back rent. So at this moment in time, a lot of landlords are working out payment arrangements with their tenants, if and when possible. We fully support that. A lot of landlords and tenants are going to be left to sort of see how long this emergency lasts, how long back rent sort of accrues in terms of number of months that folks are unable to pay, and then maybe go about a more effective way of addressing it once they have a complete idea of what the impact was. In other counties, there are protections against specific evictions, protections not only suspending the procedural portions of evictions, but there are additional protections keeping tenants housed and focusing on keeping them housed. We do not have those yet in Napa. Hopefully, we will. But at the moment, though, that's the best type of protection. Now, unfortunately, what this does not do is keep people from eventually being evicted. So if and when the emergency orders are lifted, the state orders that are in place are merely suspending evictions for the time being. When those emergency orders are lifted, anybody, for example, that hasn't paid rent, that is not current on rent, could be subject to eviction and displacement.
Can you say a little bit more about the state orders? What are the current state orders right now?
Sure. So the first one is the governor's order, which came out, I believe, in late March, if I remember right. And that order basically extended when a tenant, there are multiple steps to an eviction. And when a tenant receives the eviction notice, which is one of the middle steps, they have 5 days to respond. The governor's order extended that to 60 days. So what it still allowed them to do was to file evictions against the tenant. And that 60-day extension only applied to households that were facing a loss of income due to COVID-19. It still made evictions possible otherwise, though. There was a following order that was implemented by the State Judicial Council, which oversees the state court system. And that rule said that up until 90 days after the lifting of emergency orders, there could be no new evictions of any type. Again, sort of suspending the process, not eliminating it in any type of meaningful way. There were also portions of the rule that impacted foreclosures. So, a temporary moratorium on judicial foreclosures. That means the legal process where, after a home is foreclosed on by the bank, it is sold at auction through the court. That process is also temporarily suspended.